Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, we continue to deep dive into all things Raiders 2024 draft class. We have a little bit of help on today's show. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 1st, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show grows each and every day. That's because of you and my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, making sure we're looking good, making sure we're sounding good. Takes a ton of pride in his work, and we definitely appreciate that. Check out Ari on Twitter, at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. No calls or texts coming up in segment number 3 of today's show, only because I had an opportunity on Tuesday to catch up with my guy, Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN. He does a radio show, Amber and Ian, each and every day, does a fantastic job with that. But he also does a fantastic job when it comes to college football. He is a sideline reporter, on-field analyst. He does a great job talking to coaches, talking to players, talking to ADs, talking to NFL scouts. He's got a lot of connections, including Tom Telesco. He's really good friends with him as well. And so I had an opportunity to catch up with him on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Tuesday, and really had a good conversation about a handful of the Raiders players, including Brock Bowers, including Jackson Powers-Johnson, including Tommy Eichenberg, and a few more. So you'll hear that conversation coming up in segment number 2 and 3 of today's show. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And before we get into anything, I do got to say, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. I know I haven't done that each and every month. I'm missing out on that because, look, we only got 12 opportunities to say that, right? That's the hood classic right there. So you got to show love to the first of the month. And, again, you only get 12 opportunities a year to say that. So I know I missed a few of them. Wanted to make sure I got that in. So there you go. That's that hood classic. Show the love. Do what you got to do. But recognize it's the first of the month. It's already May 1st. It's just wild to me. But off top, before we really deep dive into any news and notes, I just wanted to kind of shout out to the Raiders and the Raider players. And this is something that we talked about before on the show. I've talked about it on my radio show before. But, man, there is so much participation right now at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. Like, the Raiders continue to put out on their social media all the different players that are in the building and participating. And it's just voluntary workout right now, right? That started on April 15th, and I actually had to hit up JT on Tuesday at the radio station. I was like, JT, what phase are they in right now? It feels like they're in such a, like deeper part of the offseason workouts, like deeper part of OTAs, or maybe even mandatory minicamp, because all I'm seeing is Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, Tyree Wilson. I'm seeing all these different players, Jack Jones, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Zamir White, all these players that they have in the mix, Michael Mayer, right? Just all out there putting in work right now, out there on the grass. They're out there. They're in the classrooms. They're doing all that work. But, we've talked about buy-in. This team, to me, it just feels different. Now, I could be falling for a banana in the tailpipe. I don't think I am. It feels different with what they're bringing to the table. And again, I just check out their social media and see all the work they're putting in. And a guy like Devontae doesn't have to be there. Max doesn't have to be there. Zamir White, he doesn't even have to be there, right? It's all voluntary. But if those big dogs and the leaders of your team are there, then the guys that are lower level on the team, they better be there, right? And so seeing Nate Hobbs there at practice, and again, Tyree Wilson, and all the big-time players, Malcolm Kuntz, the guys that have high expectations, Divine Diablo, just amongst many of the players that are there. just lets you know what they're trying to bring to the table and what they're trying to do this year as a team and as a unit. Christian Wilkins just signed a $100 million guaranteed contract, right? He doesn't have to be there, but he wants to be there. He wants to start building that team chemistry. And just to see the buy-in so early on, I'm really impressed. Again, I could be falling for the banana in the tailpipe. It could be a whole lot of nothing. They could come out there when the season starts in September and fall flat on their face. But I don't believe that that's going to be the case, because everything that you build, teams start building right now, especially when they create a culture like Antonio Pierce is trying to create with the Raiders. And he did post November 1st when he took over the job as the interim head coach. He's going to continue to build that. And with all those guys having all that buy-in right now and all them being at the team facility and them working out, again, on their own, showing up early, staying late, putting in the work that they're putting in, you've got to be impressed with that. I know I'm impressed with that, and I do believe that that's going to carry over. And when they do have OTAs, when they do have mandatory minicamp, when they get back for training camp, all that's going to be shown in a major way, how much they're building and how much they're there for each other and how much they want to continue to make this team a really good team and represent not only themselves, but represent Raider Nation. So I just want to tip the cap to the Silver and Black and Antonio Pierce. I really do believe that when we talk about changing the culture all the time, and a lot of times that's easy for coaches to say, I got to change the culture, I got to change the culture. Antonio Pierce and company have honestly changed the culture. I'm here for that. I think they've done a hell of a job. We talked about Michael Gallup, the wide receiver formerly of the Dallas Cowboys. He was going to be signed by the Silver and Black. That was something that Adam Schefter had put out on Monday. Well, on Tuesday, it became official like a referee's whistle. He's going to be actually wearing the number 10. The Raiders put out a statement. That's how you know it's official. It says Gallup joins the Silver and Black after spending the last 6 seasons with the Cowboys. Last season, Gallup played in 17 games, had 13 starts, had 34 catches for 418 yards and 2 touchdowns, set a career high in receptions with 66 and receiving yards with 1,107 and receiving touchdowns with 6 in 2019. Obviously, that was before he tore his ACL. I saw a lot of pushback on Twitter on Tuesday that, oh, yeah, he sucks. Oh, he ain't that. He's been bad ever since he tore his ACL. Again, Raider Nation, I think it's a really good pickup because he's not expected to be a number 1. He's not expected to be a number 2. He's expected to be a number 3 at best. He might honestly be a number 4, but at best he's going to be a number 3. If you can get 35 catches for 418 yards and 2 touchdowns out of a number 3 or 4 wide receiver, you're doing well. And the money is like nothing. So I think that it's a really good pickup. Again, he's not going to be doing the heavy lifting. That's going to be Davante Adams. That's going to be Jacoby Myers. That's going to be Brock Bowers. That's going to be Michael Mayer. And obviously Michael Gallup will be added to the mix. And, Dylan LaBie, he can, he could add to that as well as far as pass catchers. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from Michael Gallup, but I just know what he can provide. And again, if he can give the Raiders what he gave the Cowboys last season, 17 games, he started 13 of them. He doesn't have to be a starter for the Raiders. 34 catches, 418 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Man, I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So I think it's a really good signing, but that became official on Tuesday. The Raiders put that statement out. The final little nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast before we get into part 1 of my conversation with Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN, talking all things Raiders draft picks that they had, and also Tom Telesco. This is just a little bit of a trailer from Max Crosby's podcast, which is a very popular one, the Rush podcast. His guest this week, and it's out right now, so you can go check it out, is Davante Adams. I really just listened to the trailer of it, and it got me juiced. It got me fired up because I realized as I'm listening to these two guys talk back and forth, Davante Adams talking about himself coming out of college and what he is as a wide receiver in the league, and Max Crosby talking about being the best and knowing that he's one of the greats. I realized how these are just absolute alpha dogs that, 1, want to be the greatest at what they do in the game, and 2, love being Raiders. So if this doesn't get you juiced up, if this doesn't get you fired up and get the heart pounding a little bit, I don't know what will. There ain't an energy in the drink in the world that'll get you fired up more than listening to these two guys talk back and forth. Again, this is just a trailer to Davante Adams' appearance on the Rush podcast with Max Crosby. Check it out.
Best receiver coming out, regardless of what number I win. I was the best one. I have the best hands in the world. Y'all think I'm the best right now? I haven't even shown you not even comparable. I'm not comparable with any other receivers.
It's a dog-eat-dog league. Like, everybody wants to be that guy.
This means way more to me than it does to you.
No, I'm one of the best. I know I'm the best.
I'm here to dominate, bro. I'm an all-pro. That means Davante did this shit this year. I want to do shit everybody can't do. When I say I've never played with a dude that is as locked in and self-motivated and determined to be the best as this dude right here, never in my life, bro. Never.
I'm not looking back. The only thing I'm going to do is get better. That's it. Point blank, period. Playing for the dopest organization.
The moment I stepped through this building, it was way more competitive than we were in Green Bay.
So there it is right there. Again, it was only 45 seconds, but man, to me, that had the blood pumping. Hearing Davante Adams talk about, himself and him having the best hands in the league, and he ain't even showed you nothing yet. And that was the mentality of him coming out of school, and and then him talking about arriving with the silver and black and the competition, and then Max Crosby talking about I play for the dopest organization, and it's a doggy dog league, and I just want to be great, and I know how great I am, but I'm only scratching the surface. Like, that gets me fired up. So if you haven't checked out that episode, I'm sure it's a great one. I haven't got to check it out yet either, but scrolling through Twitter, saw that little trailer, and I said, man, I got to pass this along. So shout out to Max Crosby, who obviously has a fantastic podcast with Davante Adams on it, and it is out right now, so you can go check it out. Check it out after you listen to this one. I'm just saying. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, part 1 of my conversation with ESPN's Ian Fitzsimmons as we talk Raiders draft class, talk a little Tom Telesco. Of course, we'll start out talking about Brock Bowers. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the show, and the first one is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I also want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA. It makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. So if you're a Knicks fan, if you're a 76ers fan, you're seeing a Game 6, you're seeing the Knicks were so close to advancing to the next round, and then they lost. So Philadelphia has forced a Game 6. If you're in that area and you want to go to that game, I'm sure the ticket prices are high. Game Time is going to make it so they're not. Especially the closer it gets to tip-off, they're going to find you a great last-minute deal, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. Right now, all you got to do is take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into part 1 of the conversation I had with Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN on Tuesday on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920. Just thought this was a great conversation. Ian covers college football like a glove. There's not too many that I know that know more college football than Ian Fitzsimmons, and especially since he talks to so many scouts. He's friends with Tom Telesco and a whole lot more. So we started off the conversation. We were getting into the fact that 6 quarterbacks were taken in the top 12. The Raiders did not get one of them. At pick number 13, they didn't get a quarterback. They didn't get an offensive tackle. Tom Telesco stuck to his board and went with tight end Brock Bowers. What was Ian Fitzsimmons thinking about that?
Well, Q, you and I have talked about this off air many a time, and I respect the heck out of Tom Telesco by not reaching for a quarterback. Did he try to get up and get one? Yeah. It didn't work out? Okay. So instead of panicking and grabbing another quarterback at 13 or even trying to move up maybe to, 11 to get in front of the Broncos, who we all had a feeling they kind of liked Bo Nix. No, he stood pat and took the best player available on his board. You know where he got that? Bill Polian. You know where Bill Polian is? In Canton, the NFL Hall of Fame, right? So, and I'm going to tell you a story and working for, 4 or 5 years with Bill Polian, being a part of his broadcast crew on NFL games, and then working 4 drafts with the man. He once told me a story, Q, about need versus highest rated player on your board. It involved a guy named Reggie Wayne. And for people who don't know in Vegas, Tom Telesco was Bill Polian's right-hand man for years. And then, obviously, Bill retires, and Tom Telesco goes on to be the GM of the Chargers, and now, obviously, your general manager. And Polian said they're sitting there debating over a need at offensive line and Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne was clearly, by far, the number one rated player on their board. Did they need a wide receiver? No. They had a guy named Marvin Harrison on the other side, who ends up also where? In Canton. Well, there's a debate in the room over 4 or 5 minutes, and finally Bill Polian says, we put this damn board together for a year. Why don't we actually follow it? The highest rated player is a man named Reggie Wayne. We're taking Reggie bleeping Wayne, and how'd that work out for him? A Super Bowl happened a few years later, right?
Yeah.
Because you had dual threats. Did they need a wide receiver? No. Did the Raiders need a tight end? You took Michael Mayer, right, the year before in the second round. But Brock Bowers was the highest rated player available. What does Tom Telesco do? Improve your football team by taking the best player available on the board.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Brock Bowers was that guy, and you're very familiar with Brock. You do, and I was telling everyone how much sideline reporting you do, and you're all over the college game. There's not too many people that I know that know more about the college game than you, if anybody. And me and you had shared some conversation about Brock Bowers, but that was in, thinking that he was going to end up with the Jets. He ends up with the Raiders. What is Raider Nation getting in Brock Bowers?
Well, first of all, to all the media in Vegas, good luck. Because you might get 3 sentences out of this guy. Here's your post-game interview after Brock Bowers eventually does go for 8 grabs for about $130 and 2 touchdowns and a win. Brock, what happened out there? Take us on the field, man. How were you so productive? Well, I just want to thank my quarterback and the offensive line for doing their job. And it's all about just getting a win. That's what you're going to get. And fans, you don't care. This man is all about football, family, football, family, football, and family. That's it. That's all it. When he came to SEC Media Days 2 years ago, Kirby Smart issued an edict, and that was, I will give all the money in my wallet to the first person to get more than 3 sentences out of Brock Bowers. The man does not care about individual accolades. He does not care about attention. All that man wants to do is whip your ass on the football field and come away with a win and go home to his family to a steak dinner. That's it. So, and he is remarkably productive. Before he got the tightrope last year, the tightrope ankle surgery, which, by the way, in this day and age, that's like, dislocating a finger. He's fine. Before that happened, he was the best player in college football. At the end of the year, he was the best player in college football. And I understand there's a difference between being the best player and the most important. Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels were the 2 most important players in college football. The best player, Brock Bowers. He lined up in the slot at 50% of the time, in line 30% of the time, and they moved him around at H-back, fullback, you name it, out wide the rest of the time. You want him to wham a nose tackle, he'll do it. You want him to carry a safety up the seam, he'll do it. He is that productive. And when it comes to yards after a catch, go turn on the film. The man runs angry. Vegas, you got just a pure, natural-born football player with Brock Bowers.
Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN's Amber and Ian is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Unnecessary Roughness. You mentioned it, his versatility and how he can line up all over the field. How much of a challenge is that going to be for offensive coordinator Luke Getsy to get the most out of him? And by the way, maximize that with his, the tag team partner, Michael Mayer, who they drafted a year ago.
Man, I wouldn't call it a challenge. I call it a blessing. I mean, if I'm Getsy, I'm just sitting there having dreams of like a tan redhead riding a unicorn, right? Like, oh my gosh. What do I get to do with this guy? I mean, it's remarkable what he can do because there's not anything that he can't do. I mean, I'm not kidding you, man. I mean, look, what was this 40? Like a 4.6, I think. I mean,
something
really
like that.
Care.
Right.
I mean, I saw him 7 times in person as a field analyst and sideline reporter. The man just beats coverages. The man will wham a nose. I mean, what you name it, you put him in motion, you can run trick plays with him. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want him to do, he'll do it. And once you get the ball in his hands, Q, he's dangerous. And he runs over people and past people. He is a very unique talent to the point where when I say unique, and I can't emphasize this enough, he's not some diva. If he catches 0 passes for 0 yards and 0 touchdowns, guess what? You come away with a win, he'll be the first guy celebrating in the locker room. And then when you go up to him and go, well, no targets today. I mean, how'd that feel? It felt great. We got to win. I mean, that's Brock Bowers. I can't emphasize that enough. All that guy wants to do is whip the opponent across from him. Whether it's catching it, toting it, blocking it, it doesn't matter. All that man wants to do is win, and that's why he's a 2-time national champion and a captain.
And it's
By the way, he's also – think about this. There's only been 2 other Georgia players in the history of their storied program that have been not 1, not 2, but 3-time All-Americans. Can you name the other 2?
Terrell Davis?
No.
Herschel Walker.
1, David Pollock's the other. That's
Wow.
it. That's the list.
Wow.
That is the list of all the storied players that have come through there, going back to the 70s, right, 80s with Lindsey Scott. Going down the list. It doesn't. That's the list. Done.
Wow.
Herschel Walker, David Pollock, and your guy. That's the list.
So there was part 1 of the conversation I had with Ian Fitzsimmons on my radio show on Tuesday, just talking about Raider draft picks, and that was a lot of Brock Bowers and also some Tom Telesco. And, again, he's a guy that he knows Tom Telesco really well, wanted him to be a part of his radio show, Amber and Ian on ESPN. But now that Tom Telesco is the Raiders GM, he can't do that. So sorry, Ian. And he gave me some dirt about that. Like, thanks, Q. Thanks, right? Your team takes my damn GM that was going to be a guest on my show all the time. But, no, Tom Telesco is good friends of Ian, and Ian's told me nothing but good things about Tommy T and what he's going to do for the Silver and Black. And I think when you see the first draft class by Tom Telesco, you understand why Ian has a lot of respect for him. Coming up in segment number 3, part 2 of the conversation, we'll talk a little JPJ, some Jackson Powers Johnson. We'll talk about Tommy Eichenberg and a little bit more in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. But before we do that, we've got to, turn the game off. We got to take a pause, right? We got to talk about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Flag on you, Q. Flag on a play. You've talked about that. You've talked about that multiple times. But there's so much good stuff in this game that I can't help but talk about it some more. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. They've got the stickers, unique stickers you could trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, new playing pieces to travel with boards. They've got some great emojis you could taunt your friends with. Who doesn't want to do that while you're smashing their buildings and taking their vaults and taking their moolah, right? Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot machine that plays a lot of games as well. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench. Go download it now for free on the Google Play or App Store. Get your game on with Monopoly Go. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Part 2 of my conversation with ESPN's Ian Fitzsimmons. Real good dude, man. He's a real good friend. Definitely appreciate catching up with him. Got to see him in Detroit, and he was all over the NFL draft. He covered it like a glove, and, well, he's really deep in college football, so that's what he does. So starting off part 2 of the conversation with Ian on my radio show on Tuesday, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, I started out asking about JPJ. Jackson Powers Johnson, the center and guard out of Oregon. What did Ian know about JPJ?
We had the privilege of having Oregon 5 times last year on ESPN Radio with our crew, and Mark Kessler, the former first-round pick at quarterback, and Kelly Stoffer, and my sorry butt. And this dude, there were a few guys that I really fell in love with at Oregon. One was Bo Nix, their quarterback, who Wilson Love, their strength and conditioning coach, told me Bo Nix was the first guy in to lift and the last guy to leave, holding guys accountable and taking mental note. If that guy's the last guy in, right, and the first guy to leave, we have to have a chat. You know who the other guy was? JPJ. He was right there with Bo Nix, holding guys accountable. And all the NFL, I talked to the same 4 NFL scouts before every game. just getting their thoughts on, future projections and what they think of guys. And every single one of them came back with very similar comps on Jackson Powers Johnson. Alabama All-American, Colts All-Pro center, Ryan Kelly was one name that always came up. The other, Tyler Linderbaum, first-round pick, Baltimore Ravens, because of his footwork and the way he finishes blocks. Man, think about this when it comes to Jackson Powers Johnson. At the Senior Bowl, I'm down there, and I see him, and he doesn't look quite the same, right? I'm like, that ain't the same guy I saw all year long. And I went up to Jim Nagy, a 5-time Super Bowl champion, and the recent Senior Bowl director. And I said, JPJ, he goes, dude, he's dealing with a hamstring, but he's still out there balling.
Wow.
Now let that sink in. He came down, told Jim Nagy, and only Jim, did not make an excuse to any NFL GM, any scout, any head coach. And they're all at the Senior Bowl. He said, like, between you and I, my hamstring's bothering me, but I still want to play if that's okay. Ask permission. Nagy goes, look, I was a former scout. If I were you, just sit out. Just I'll tell everybody. Just come to the interviews. He goes, no. I want to play. He did. Lasted 2 days. Then he pulls the hamstring. He goes and apologizes to every head coach and general manager and Jim Nagy. I'm sorry I got hurt. He shouldn't have been out there in the first place.
Right.
That's the work ethic of this guy. He is just built differently. He played every sport he could in high school. Everything. You name it, he did it. I asked him why. He goes, it keeps you mentally fresh. So it's not the same, repetition, and you're using different muscles, different body types. It helps your footwork, your eye, hand, and everything. I wish I could rip one of these dudes that you're asking me about. You're asking me about two guys that are high character and just boy dog warriors that just want to come out and whip your ass. And for a guy like that in a Senior Bowl, the most important week of his professional career, because once you get done with college football and you go to the Senior Bowl, you're now a pro. This is an audition. This is your professional career has begun. And to go in there with a tweaked hamstring and still give it 2 days of hard work and held his own on a bum wheel, that says everything you know about JPJ. Done.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and we're all excited about what he brings to the table. He's one of my favorite players that the Raiders were able to select. And Ian, before we let you go, I want to ask you about one more player. We're going to do a preview on this guy a little bit later on in the show, but Tommy Eichenberg from Ohio State, the linebacker.
Look, how do I sum this up without being controversial? Let's go back to Chris Spielman, to A.J. Hawk, to Tommy Eichenberg. Now, I'm not comparing that dude to the first-round picks, right? I mean,
right.
I'm just going a pasty tone, if that makes sense, okay?
Yes.
But he's not your typical head-bobbing pasty linebacker out of Ohio State. Does that make sense? When you get that head bob from the pasty linebacker at any school, that's a bad thing. That means you're getting outrun, right? I mean, you're not going to catch the guy that you're trying to chase down.
Right.
You're an effort guy. Tommy Eichenberg, he's been banged up a little bit at times. In the fifth round, you might have some here. I mean, he can play. He's a four-core special teams guy, stands up against blockers. I mean, has the ability to be more of a run blocker than anything else. But at 6'2", I'm going to guess he's around 230, 235. I did not have Ohio State this year. I had him twice last year. But, he was always around the football. And when it comes to pasty linebackers out of Ohio State, you have a shot with a fifth-round steal here to maybe have something. Look, again, I want to emphasize, not comparing to the two guys I just mentioned, because one of them is a national champion, a Super Bowl champion, and the leading tackler in the history of the Green Bay Packers. I am by no means comparing Tommy Eichenberg to A.J. Hawk or the great Chris Spielman. But what I'm saying is, this dude was always around the football, and you might have a steal there in the fifth round.
I like it. I really do. And I want to go on and on and on and talk about the rest of the draft class, but I don't want to get greedy. So far, I'm doing pretty good, 3 for 3 with these players. Let me ask you this. Out of Pittsburgh, Air Force, New Hampshire, Mississippi State, and Maryland, which one did you cover more?
None of the above.
I love it.
I'll tell you this. Mike Loxley's an old friend, the head coach at Maryland. That Glaze guy, man.
Yes.
Hey, look, let me tell you something. Lox can coach him up, dude.
Yep.
So in the third round, I don't mind it at all. Only one reason and one reason only. I never saw him in person, but Mike Loxley can develop talent.
So there was part 2 of the conversation right there with Ian Fitzsimmons. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I thought that was a nice little deep dive right there. And it's funny, on my radio show, Jay Stevens, host of Locked On Buckeyes, he was actually on my show as well just to talk specifically about Tommy Eichenberg. And so I didn't know what conversation to bring to the table today, except for the fact that I knew that the conversation with Ian was about more than just one player. So I thought it would actually do more good to talk about multiple players at one time. And it was about the same length of a conversation as opposed to just one, even though Jay Stevens, host of Locked On Buckeyes, had a ton of great things to say about Tommy Eichenberg. And I think that the Raiders got a really good player in him. But hopefully you enjoyed that conversation with Ian Fitzsimmons. I know I enjoyed talking with him. Again, he's a great dude on Amber and Ian. His show comes on right before my show comes on, Game Night on ESPN Radio, which is 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific Time. So there's that. But many thanks to Ian Fitzsimmons. And again, like I said, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation. Coming up tomorrow, we'll get back to calls and texts. Got plenty of them. We'll get those. We'll have more news and notes of the day. And of course, we'll have plenty more conversation as we continue to, motor through, talk about the draft class that the Raiders had and see how this team is putting everything together. But we'll go back and we'll do that coming up tomorrow, Raider Nation. So until then, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.